And then in January of 2019 is when we finally had decided to resign. And the church had come out with the Come Follow Me curriculum. And our family texted wanting to do like let's all do the Come Follow Me curriculum together kind of a thing. And we'll all talk about it together. And we were both like, oh, we don't want to do that. But we also weren't really ready to tell them that we'd left the church yet because we were scared of how they would react. And we kind of felt like we didn't have a choice though, because we didn't know how to say no without them, being like, well, why? And at that point we told our families that we were no longer members and we didn't want to be, and we didn't want to talk about it. Yeah.
Can I just say, I want to highlight something that's a super ethical problem, because, first of all, Mormon church leadership have known about all these things in the CS letter. They've known about since 1910, 1920, all of them. Book of Abraham, Book of Mormon, View of the Hebrews, Joseph's polygamy. They've known it all, right? And they've intentionally chosen not to educate the members and to perpetuate whitewashed, correlated, deceptive narrative to the members. So that's strike number one of dishonesty. And of course, there's the Leonard Arrington stuff in the 70s and the September 6 in the 90s and all the different ways, Fawn Brody excommunicating her in the 40s, all the ways they've excommunicated and punished anyone who ever talked about these things to keep it out of the members' consciousness and to keep the members from not knowing all these problems. So that's kind of strike 2 or 3 or 4. But then you fast forward to the essays, which the internet, forced them to produce. But we know from Elder Stephen Snow, church historian, and Marlon Jensen, that they intentionally did not advertise the essays. They wanted them to be there for plausible deniability, to be able to say, see, we're honest about our history, but they didn't want members broadly to know about them. And so to this day, bishops, stake presidents, everyone, members everywhere still don't know that they even exist. But strike 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, I'm losing track, is that they could just very easily train all stake presidents, all stake high councilmen, all bishops, all bishopric members, all Relief Society presidents, all young women's leaders, all CES. They could train them on all the historical problems so that everybody knew the problems. So that, then when Lexi has this faith crisis, the bishop's like not clueless.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about telling your family because they already know.
Yeah.
But the church hasn't done that. They even when they've been honest, they couldn't be honest about being honest. And then they've left this burden on you and others to have to educate your bishop, educate your leaders, educate your spouse, educate your parents. And it's unethical. The ethical thing to do would be for the church to just come clean church-wide and then deal with the consequences. But that's the ethical thing to do. But because they haven't done that, you're having to carry all this burden and shame and pain that isn't really yours to bear. And it's just a little soapbox, but.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it was one of the things, again, that just bothered me the most about it was knowing that I had tried my whole life to be a really good Mormon and nobody had ever told me all of this stuff. And they could have. And it's one of the things that still bothers me today is, making content and seeing comments like, everybody knows this. Just being like, no, they don't. Actually, I didn't know it. My family didn't know it. My husband didn't know it. My friends didn't know it. My bishop didn't know it. It's weird. It's weird to know exactly how much was left out, in seminary lessons and stuff, when you're saying they could teach, all of the leaders within the church, all of this information and how to talk about it and how to deal with it. They really could. Yeah. And they just haven't. And nobody knew.
And for so long, people have said, well, John, you're just trying to take people out of the church. You're just trying to destroy the church and destroy faith. No. And I've just gotten the language in the past few years of how to talk about this. It goes back to consent. People that are members of the church deserve to know what they're a member of. People who are joining the church deserve to know what they're joining. Missionaries who go out, who use their reputation, their time, their money to be serving the church and preaching the gospel, being the church's salespeople for all intents and purposes. They deserve to know everything about the organization that they're shilling for or they're selling. It's about informed consent. And to this day, every single minute that goes by where Mormon church members are giving money to the church, giving their time, their reputation, their lives to the church without being fully informed of the history of the problems is just a massive epidemic of non-consensual undue influence by the church on its membership. And that it has to stop. And that's one of the reasons I haven't stopped Mormon Stories yet. I think that's probably why you do what you do, what Kara does, what she does, and because we just want everybody to engage the church with full knowledge and full consent.
Well, yeah, and it's easy to understand that when you've been in that position, but a lot of people haven't, obviously, and that's kind of one of the reasons, you know, I will tell my story and talk about it, because for me, it wasn't like this little thing where, you know, I found out and it's no big deal. It was life-changing. My whole life was on one path because of the church, because of the things the church told me, because of, you know, I was living my life this way. My kids, we would have all lived our life this way. I would have raised them a certain way. I made all of my choices based on the church being true and on believing that because the church was true, I was going to be with my family forever. And so it's one thing to say, you know, people that are members of the church give 10% of their income to the church, and that's a lot of money, and that's a big deal. But more than just that, it's giving your whole life, everything you are, your whole identity being wrapped up in the church being true. And for me, finding
all the information.
And not having all of that, and then finding it out later, and there being stuff that to this day, 2.5 years later, I'm still learning that I wish somebody would have told me when I was a member. And just how hard it was to have my entire belief system collapse and go from having a plan for exactly how my life would go and what I was going to do when I die, how, you know, my entire future I had planned out in my head and my castles above. And this information the church could have and should have taught me, they didn't. And so now my whole identity is lost. I didn't know how to not be a Mormon. I didn't know how to raise my kids without the church. I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I didn't know, you know, I wanted and was very, very happy with the idea of dying, being with my family forever in the afterlife together. And when I lost my faith in the church, it felt like I had lost my whole future. The future I had planned for myself was gone. So, you know, when people talk to me about, why do you care so much? Why does it matter? That was everything. That was my whole life. And it was gone in the matter of a few hours reading a book and finding out information that, like you said, they could have told me and did not. So it is a really big deal to me, and helping other people that go through that is a really big deal to me.